the immediate departure of Muammar Gaddafi within 72 hours.
Negotiating an exit, Libya's opposition says Gaddafi will not be prosecuted at home if he steps down in the next 3 days. It's 1600 GMT. I'm Lauren Taylor. You're watching Al Jazeera live from Doha. Fighting intensifies in Ras Lanouf, a key Libyan oil terminal. And that's added to Libya's oil woes. Production drops as much as 90%. We'll look at the impact on global oil prices. Violence breaks out at a Yemeni prison as the anti-government uprising continues throughout the country. Thousands take to the streets in Côte d'Ivoire in anger at the killing of 7 unarmed female protesters. Hello, a leader of the Libyan opposition has told Al Jazeera of an offer that he's made to Muammar Gaddafi, that if he stops the bombing and steps down as Libyan leader within 72 hours, he will not face prosecution at home. There's so far been no response from Gaddafi. Lawrence Lee has this report.
For a man with such a strong line in bombast and exaggeration, the suggestion of Gaddafi making a deal on the quiet which would allow him to escape Libya unscathed is startling. It's claimed he raised the suggestion on Sunday when opposition forces were on the road to Sirte, his hometown, and before the Libyan army had retaken the town of Bin Jawad and pushed the rebels back. According to Al Jazeera's sources in Libya, Gaddafi sent this man, a former prime minister who's from Benghazi, as his envoy to the shadow government there, with an offer which would end the violence. It seems his main demands were aimed less at ensuring the future of the country and more to make sure that he and his family could continue living in luxury. So it's alleged that Gaddafi wanted assurances that he wouldn't be prosecuted for crimes against humanity, that he and his family would be able to leave to a country of his choosing, and that he would retain assets, many of which have been seized in countries from Europe to Japan. The message back from Benghazi to Gaddafi was equally specific: end the bombing and get out of Libya within 72 hours.
We see no objection in ending bloodshed among the Libyans in return for 2 key demands. First, Muammar Gaddafi stopping air and inland bombardment of Zawiya, Misrata and Ras Lanouf. Second, his immediate departure within 72 hours. And in return, we guarantee that he will not be prosecuted domestically.
What prompted Gaddafi to fold in this way is unclear, since his troops have been gaining ground. Perhaps as well as fears about prosecution, he's becoming concerned about the growing pressure from the international community to raise the threat of a military response.
We've got NATO, as we speak, consulting in Brussels around a wide range of potential options, including potential military options, in response to the violence that continues to take place inside of Libya.
There may be many ordinary people in Benghazi who see Gaddafi's demands as outrageous, and perhaps the authorities too. But equally, if Gaddafi were to leave the country, they could surely still claim an historic victory, and the authorities in Benghazi are certainly concerned about saving lives as well. Inevitably, Libyan state TV has denied an offer even being made. The next move now surely belongs to Gaddafi. One final point: how Gaddafi's own soldiers feel about the prospect of being abandoned may prove interesting as well. Lawrence Lee, Al Jazeera.
Well, our correspondent Hoda Abdelhamid joins us now live from Benghazi, the seat of the uprising in the east. Hoda, give us a bit more detail about what you've heard about these negotiations or potential negotiations.
Well, I have to tell you that I've been hearing really conflicting reports, actually completely opposite reports. Now, we've been speaking to the former Justice Minister, who is actually the head of the National Council, and he's been telling us that there has been some sort of indirect talks with people from Tripoli that had reached out to the National Council, trying to find some sort of deal for an honorable exit of Gaddafi and his family from the country. He did say that he thought that if these indirect talks were happening, happening. They would not happen without the green light of Gaddafi himself. Now, according to him, they were trying to find some sort of proposal by which, as I said earlier, Gaddafi would leave, and a few conditions. One of the conditions being that neither Gaddafi nor any members of his family would be prosecuted once they leave this country. We then heard over the past hour from the spokesman of the National Council, Abdelhafiz Ghora, here in Benghazi, and so he denies that there has been any talk whatsoever with the other side. He says no one has reached out, there is no proposal, and there is no talk. And he also said this is not time for dialogue. The only thing we want to know is when is Gaddafi planning to step down. He did say that the blood of the Libyan people that has been spilt not only during the uprising but over the past 42 years is not for negotiation, and he did say that also the money of the Libyan people is not for negotiations. That's because it was hinted that Gaddafi was trying also to make sure that not all of his assets would be frozen. So I would say at this stage we would think that there's two sides in the story. There appears to be three sides.
Indeed, and are you surprised that that looks like, I mean, what it sounds like is a split within the opposition movement? How damaging would that be if it affects the way they kind of conduct themselves in the next few days, not just in terms of politics, but on the battlefield?
I think it's very damaging as an image for the National Council. Some people might think there is a split within the National Council. Some people might think that this is a ploy from Tripoli to try to actually have them fight within each other. But I think it's a very telling story about how chaotic the situation here. As you said, we can't get one straight message out of the National Council, the head of it and the spokesman saying two opposite things. And on the battlefield, you find exactly the same situation, whereas you find the rebels really willing and disorganized, but wanting to go forward, wanting to push forward, and you find the military commanders, those who switch sides, who are trying to give some structure to this armed rebellion, trying to tell the rebels, you got to push back, you got to organize before you're being able to go forward. You'll find the volunteers telling you, no, we're going all the way straight to Sirte. And I think this chaotic situation could very much backfire in the face of the opposition.
OK, Hoda, thank you very much indeed for bringing us that update there from Benghazi. Well, let's talk to Ibrahim Shaki, from the director at the Brookings Centre here in Doha. Thanks very much for being with us again. Just on this point, on the kind of slightly chaotic nature of obviously both sides, but in particular the opposition here, is there a danger that they are starting to lose their way in terms of what they do next?
No, there is no doubt that this is a very difficult position actually for the opposition, because under such circumstances we will most likely see a conflict or an intra-party conflict that's between principled positions and pragmatic positions, where those principled positions that they want to stick to the goal, to the idea, to the ethical dimension of the conflict, and that al-Gaddafi should be tried. And Gaddafi, this is the Libyan money, this is the Libyan and the atrocities that he committed against the people, versus the pragmatic